Hi everyone, welcome to the Babylons. It's been a few days since the Brighton result, and Moyes is still manager, but the rumours are that players are unhappy, pressure is building, and due to that, we're now starting to see links to other managers, one of those being Michael Carrick, which we'll get into in this video. So stay tuned, guys, and hopefully we'll be able to shed some light on what Michael Carrick can bring, why maybe we're looking at him, and whether we think it's a good go for us or not. Okay, so as we say, Michael Carrick has been rumoured to be linked to West Ham. We are looking at the 41-year-old who is having quite a good season at Middlesbrough. He's kind of helped them have a resurgence this year and rejuvenated a team that were really struggling earlier in the season under Chris Wilder. He's taken them from really being in a struggling 5-3-2 formation into a bit more of a 4-2-3-1, but we'll kind of go into that in more detail as we kind of move forward. But, as we know with Michael Carrick, he is a guy who's been around in football for a very long time, and someone obviously we should know because obviously came from our youth team, was an England international, probably quite an underrated player during his playing career. And obviously he's been a coach at Manchester United and obviously managed them for 3 games, in which he won all 3 during his time at United, and then obviously subsequently has went back into a coaching role before obviously moving now on to Middlesbrough. He's done quite well there. Obviously, he's had 19 games, so still very much a fledgling in terms of his managerial career, but 19 games with 14 wins is an incredibly good record. They lost their first game with him looking to kind of implement a different style, different tactic, which the players kind of struggled with from a defensive point of view. But he's done well in understanding the limitations of his team in which to maximise their outputs, both offensively and defensively this season. And what has been impressive is when you hear him talk is that he's not wedded to one formation. He's not wedded to one particular approach. He's willing to be adaptive. So he's willing to look at his players and change how they work and how he utilises them consistently, which is obviously a mark of a manager that's looking to embrace the ever-changing landscape, not only of football, but obviously of his team as they develop, as they grow, and then looking to augment their tactics in which to bring the best out of them. Now, a player in particular during that period who's really, really benefited from him has been Akpom, who had 3 goals under Wilder. And since that change with Carrick coming in, he's now got 16 goals out of 16 goals in a time period with Carrick. So he's the first player in a number of years who's on the verge of going past 20 for Middlesbrough, which I think is, as I say, hasn't been achieved in a number of years. And it was also the first time really in Akpom's career that he's been as free scoring as this. So again, another player that has seen the benefit of Carrick. And one of the reasons in that he's identified within that player that was he's a good natural finisher, playing as a centre forward actually restricts him. So by giving him and opening up the pitch for him, by dropping him back into a more kind of attacking midfield or support striker role, he's able to utilise his natural instincts to make those runs into the area in which then get on the end of crosses and so on. Now, when we kind of look at how they set up, what's really interesting is they have 2 completely different setups. Now, obviously, out of possession, they have quite a balanced 4-2-3-1 formation. And obviously, Akpom plays more as the cam. So essentially, it comes into a bit of a 4-1-1 kind of formation when they are defending, or a 4-3-3. So it gives them a good balance because then they're covered across the pitch. And it also means that then they have opportunities in which to break out from that. Obviously, in midfield, they have Howson and the young players come through, having a real breakthrough season for him as well, who's only 20 years old as well. So, again, he's not afraid to bring in younger players and give them essentially time on the pitch to develop it. Not only that, to also be a main component. Now, what they have lacked in this is because they're not necessarily as good as in a high press. they play a kind of a mid to low block in this formation, and one of the limitations is that both midfielders are not necessarily as switched in defensively as could be, so they can be sometimes susceptible, even in this mid to low block, to getting played through it or not plugging the gaps whilst the defence is trying to man mark or zonally mark the opposition. Obviously, that can change if he was coming with Stam, for the duration of the end of the season, because also we do have the likes of Declan Rice, who is very switched on defensively. Looking into the future, again, someone like Flynn Downs also is very switched on defensively, so understands that in that midfield, when you're defending, not to kind of stand in straight lines and also to stagger. What is quite impressive about them in possession is the fact that they, in essence, play a back three, because their right back will invert centrally to then make up a back three. Their midfield, again, they played at double pivot with one just sitting slightly higher. But what is important is that the right winger, who is Isaiah Jones, he went from being a right back or a right wing back under Wilder to now playing in a fully fledged right winger. I believe it's Giles, who plays left back, again, is pushed right forward. So they essentially play a 5 men along the front line. And again, this is to create those overloads. And what they look to do is to build on some of the successes that Wilder had, and what Wilder used to look to do in that 5 at the back kind of formation was to overload the wing positions. So to utilise the fullback and the centre back in a role where the centre back was creating underlapping and overlapping, as well as a central midfielder coming out also to create those overloads. So it's a kind of team and a tactic that was predicated on getting your final third entries and mainly in the flanks, and then getting crosses into the area. Under Carrick, that has dropped in terms of the just looking really for these in a one-dimensional way, looking to get in the wings and attack. What he looks to do with them is to, again, be more positive in possession, to look to retain possession and hold possession. And by doing that, they're able then to obviously create more openings and there to be, more organic in the final third, rather than looking at very formulaic approaches of looking to just kind of constantly hit the wing, whether that be long diagonal passes or long diagonal balls, and playing on the second and third kind of knockdowns, and then trying to whip in crosses. They're now looking to mix that up and kind of pull the team around. And if you have the time, do try and check out some of the things that Carrick has done, and some of the videos that even Middlesbrough put out of, where he talks around the importance of opening up the pitch. So not looking to play in straight lines, looking to play passes into angles. Again, it's no surprise coming from a player who was all about opening up the pitch, a player who often sat behind the play, but was intrinsic to that play, because he was a player who would be essentially the orchestrator, essentially a metronome for the team in receiving the ball, asking for pressure essentially before releasing others and creating space just through kind of minuscule drops of the shoulder movements and passing. He was always in control, and that's what he's looking to adopt into his team, a team that is not only positive, but it is calm, it's collected, they look to open play. And what's also interesting is the players talking about how he is breeding this positivity in that team, is that he's allowing them to go and make mistakes. He's actually encouraging them to go out and play, to have fun, to enjoy what they're doing. And if they make a mistake, then that's fine. A mistake is going to happen. This is football. And you need to remember that you're in a privileged position. So making a mistake by trying something is better than just not trying anything at all. So he's really starting to foster this attitude of players going out and expressing themselves, which is something we have argued on this channel quite often. We don't have a manager that does that. We have a manager who often chastises players for making mistakes, when in fact really what they're actually doing is they're trying to make things happen. Players like Ben Rama, for instance, is often lamented by David Moyes for his lack of control in possession at times, but really what he's most times, especially in the final third, he's looking to create. He's looking to maybe sometimes force it, but he's looking to be positive, whereas others kind of hide and play the safe passes, which often is what Moyes likes. He likes to have control, but really he wants a pragmatic approach. He doesn't really like to see chances, people taking chances and maybe losing possession because they've tried a risky pass or a difficult pass. He'd rather that the simple pass is made to retain possession, to cycle the ball, try and get in the wings and then cross. This isn't something we see in newer managers like the likes of Kompany, like the likes of Carrick. And as we can see when we talk around of when they're in possession, it's a really aggressive formation because, again, it's pushing players incredibly high. The right winger holds the width on the right. The left back, obviously, again, holds the width on the left-hand side. And then if the team is playing a back four, then obviously they're going to get a central overload because there are three players they have to deal with because the left winger plays in the inside space. And again, you have Akpom making those late runs, so it's difficult then to kind of mark because he holds off. And these are things that you could, easily translate to West Ham when you look at the team that we have. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Aaron Cresswell, but you would look at how we would play and you would kind of invert that process where you would then have Cresswell would be maybe playing in that kind of drops in as that left centre back, holds those half spaces because of his ability to link play and obviously understanding how to play as a centre back in a back three. The likes of Soufal could be pushed high, in places where the left back is. Bowen would be the player that kind of inverts and comes inside. And you have obviously then on the other side, you either have Cornet or you have Ben Rama out there. And then when you look at the centre forward and attacking midfielder, you could even go as far to say that Scamacca, much like Akpom, is great when he is allowed that freedom, when he's allowed to come away from a centre back, because he's very good. Obviously, he's very good in tight spaces. He also has the ability to create, and also his natural instincts to get into the area or to hold outside or just on the edge of the area is something, again, that can be used to exploit. And the likes of Ings can be used to stretch. So when you start to look at it in that way, there's actually some really exciting combinations that we could see if Carrick came in. Now, obviously, it's very young or very early stage of his career, managerially-wise, but he has played under some incredible managers in his time. And, when he goes through this, he does look at the certain aspects of the game as to, I remember this is what Louis van Gaal did, this is what Jose did. He's taking, and even Sir Alex Ferguson, obviously a huge portion of his career as well. And he's taken aspects of every one of his managers and starting to apply them into the game and how he wants to play. And when you start to look at that list, there are some incredible managers and some would have gained some insanely good ideas and practices over those years. And by bringing those together, taking those inspirations and applying that to his way, which we saw on the pitch, was very much that of he was a thinking man's football player. He would be able to analyse and see the whole pitch. He was 2 or 3 chess moves ahead all the time. And what's, again, important is the fact that he's not wedded to any one formation. We talk about it's out of possession, for instance, that this is often a 4-2-3-1 formation, but often it goes into a 4-4-2 because Akpom then joins the centre forward. So again, it's try and limit the passes into those central areas, or he drops in slightly to again limit the opposition being able to play out through defence and break into those central areas. So he is quite happy to be very organised, but when he goes into an attacking phase, he's then to be really open, expressive, which is obviously something that I think most fans would like to see. Now, from a point of view, is well, why is he linked to West Ham? Well, the obvious point is he was an ex-West Ham player, so by association, there's that immediate link, and also it kind of makes sense if you're looking for a feel-good story. If you're on the board, if you remove Moyes, bringing in an ex-pro, but not only that, an ex-youth player who's gone on to be incredibly successful, makes a lot of sense. Also, if you get relegated, you then arguably still have your manager for the long term, because we brought you in to try and keep us up. If you keep us up, you arguably then have a manager that's being earmarked as the next wave of managers and the new up-and-coming manager, and you have then tied them down to long term. If you get relegated again, you don't then have to have that problem of having to not only find new places for players, getting rid of your manager, bringing in a new one. You have a manager who's been there for 10 games. You can start to work out and discuss with players as to if we were to relegate, who's staying, and start to plan appropriately. So you can go into the next season with your best foot forward. If you was to say, bring in the likes of Carrick with the view of they stay on regardless of whether we stay up or go down. Now, is it a good move for West Ham at this point? Many would argue no. And there is a risk if we were to go for a manager who has little experience in terms of behind in the dugout. But having said that, there's also a risk if we remain as we are. Now, bringing in someone who understands the traditions of the club, who already understands not only the league as well, will have added benefit to the likes of but to David Sullivan and the like. They will view that as there is a level of readiness. There's no need to get up to speed because there's someone that understands the makeup of the club, understands the league and the requirements, and that it will hopefully then bring a much faster transition. And again, what we really need, besides all of that stuff as to why they would probably consider him as an option, also likely because he's probably going to be cheap as well. If we're being brutally honest, he'll likely have a cheap kind of expiration point or cheap compensation package from Middlesbrough, and as a manager, not likely to command the top dollar to some of the managers that we have been rumoured to have talked to. So again, the price factor will come into it, especially with the compensation package we'd have to give to Moyes should he go. What I do think is, at this stage, it is a sensible choice. Should we go with it? Does he probably need more time in management? Probably does. But I think the other argument is, when you also look at the likes of Vincent Kompany, when you give these managers more time to develop, sometimes you then lose out on them. The likes of, say, Graham Potter, for instance, is a prime example of a manager that was essentially was being incubated at Brighton by bigger clubs by not moving from them. They've been watching him, and then essentially that interest is incubated over time. And other teams who are maybe a run or two above Brighton, as they were at that point, didn't take that leap when they had chances. So again, it's a manager that could go on to be something quite big, like an Eddie Howe, for instance, the same example, where it's been at a smaller club, always been talked about, but never been kind of targeted because the bigger names have been more attractive. But given the chance, they really could make changes. Now, ultimately, I do think Moyes is safe for a while. I do think this is just a rumour, maybe just to find out as to where West Ham fans are in terms of their loyalties to, say, Carrick, to Moyes, and to see as to whether we would be supportive of such a move if it was to come ahead. I think that the kind of lukewarm reception is probably what they were hoping for, because it means they're not under pressure to remove Moyes. They're not under pressure then to go get Carrick. And if he was to come in, it will kind of be accepted as maybe a fair one. There'll be some hesitancy because of he's still early in his career. But ultimately, the reaction is probably one that they're happy with. Now, if Carrick comes in, the one thing I think we can say that would be good is that he will be bringing in fresh ideas. He will look to augment what we've done under Moyes. He wouldn't be radical. He will do it piece by piece and slowly, but he will open up the team. He will allow them to be more expressive. He will allow them to take more risks. He'll encourage them to make mistakes, because mistakes can lead to huge benefits. Well, I say mistakes, what I mean is take those risks that ultimately others may view as a mistake. One time, if it comes off 1 in 10, it's not 9 mistakes and then one brilliant piece of inspiration. He will encourage that piece. He will open up the players to take more responsibility in possession, to help the teammates with the way they pass and to open up the pitch. Just small little pieces that could actually have a huge impact on the team overall as we go into what is going to be 13 massive games. Now, we'll wait and see what happens. We have Aston Villa coming up. Should that game go much the way of the Brighton game, we may see that Moyes finally loses that bulletproof vest that he has and may actually finally take a shot from David Sullivan and be out the door. And we may then be in this conversation with Carrick. Should that come about, it's a sensible choice in the situation we are. Whether it's the choice that many would want, it is another question, but I do believe it is a sensible choice for the situation we're in, and also ensures that should worse come to worse and we get relegated, he has a period in which to implement an idea and a philosophy into the team to understand who he's going to take with him into that league and can start the preparations and the planning for next season. So with that, we're going to draw it to a close. Everyone, thank you for watching. Again, if you do like this video, please do hit the like button. Please do subscribe. And as ever, come on, you Irons.